What's up, YouTube fam? Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're going to discuss everything we've learned over the last 60 days since selling options, the mistakes we've made, the things that we did well, and ultimately what we could do better. So let's get right into it. Basically, since we started this channel, right, it's been a challenge starting from $20,000. And when we took the first trade, we had some drawdown, but closed it for a profit. And then never saw those levels again. We obviously had, it was, win after win, and then we took a couple losses, ultimately recovered it all. I don't even know if we took losses, truthfully. I think maybe we were just in a position that we, we're still in. Because I think, the reason why we recovered so fast is because the position ended up actually working. But it's all documented on the channel. So, if you wanted, find the video that's within, this date range, and you'll see exactly what happened. Ultimately, every single thing has been documented. And if you've been with me from the beginning, you know that. So yeah, we got to 25.2 and we've had, a couple corrections. So what was the mistake, right? Or better yet, what worked, what got the account scaling, and ultimately what didn't work, right? That's what you guys want to know. And ultimately, the answer is pretty simple, but I will say this, right? It's not that anything didn't work. It's that eventually, the market was going to pull back. Now, I did, if I was to say the mistake I made, right, it's not that, obviously you guys know I like to look at charts and I try not to overthink the charts, right? Like, yes, I can say, oh, I could have seen this coming, but ultimately on the higher time frame, it's like, this was some candles that looked like a breakout, right? And I know anyone who's trying to trade, or has traded, must have seen similar things. Obviously the fake out came, right? But that's not necessarily always going to happen, right? So I'm not necessarily upset about getting into these positions that have put this account into the drawdown. I think the only mistake I truthfully made was just oversizing on this Con L position, because if I would have went in with one contract, I could have been selling puts, with lower strike prices, or just sticking to other stocks, right? So if we go into the history of the channel, right, you'll see that it was a lot of winning trades. Well, I'm going to go all the way to the beginning and just like kind of slowly scroll and just talk so you guys can just see every single position, right? But ultimately, it was a lot of wins, right? And that's why I wouldn't necessarily change much about the strategy. So, all right, we started right here. First position sold the firm for 588, and it expired above the strike. Shopify, same thing, right? So just collected 700. Robinhood collected 25. SMCI, this was the first time I actually found out that you didn't need to wait so you didn't need to wait till expiration, right? I didn't even know when I first started this channel and this challenge that you didn't have to wait till expiration. I thought the only way you can close the position was when the option expired. So these were the first ones that I sold it for 1,000, but then bought it back for, I think like 400. So I profited 6. I'm not going to talk about all of them individually, right? But the point is, it was a lot of wins, right? So, I do want to reference back that quote I heard in the comment section, or saw in the comment section under one of my videos last week, where he said option sellers eat like birds but poop like elephants, right? There is some truth to it, because if you do what I did, where you oversize and then eventually the inevitable fake out does come, you can see, your account fall pretty fast. Now, if we look at the NASDAQ, listen, it still looks good. And that's part of what's a little concerning, is like it hasn't really gone down so much, where Bitcoin has obviously begun to fall a little bit, which, you want to see Bitcoin doing better than the NASDAQ. Like, obviously, if the NASDAQ is going up, and when I say better, right, it's obviously not percentage-wise. It's more of just like a look on a chart, right? Like, you don't want to see the NASDAQ look like it's making a move up without Bitcoin, because what do you think is going to happen when the NASDAQ begins to pull back, right? So if Bitcoin is looking very good, now, obviously, in this case, this doesn't necessarily still look bad. Like, it could still flip and take out all of this and then head up, or it can continue down. Like, any of that can happen. And that's why I started selling options, right? Just because I realized I wasn't good at predicting what the next move would be. So I realized the better way to do it is to figure out a way where you can buy things that you are bullish on, but ultimately continue to buy the dip, right? Because dollar cost averaging doesn't work for people, because people end up putting all their, liquid capital into their investments. So it's very difficult to dollar cost average when you don't have any liquid capital left. But ultimately, I figured out with selling options that it's a way to, take strike prices that are lower than where you're at when you take the position, right? So this $50, it was originally 55. I rolled it. And let's just say hypothetically, by January 17th, it's well below $50. I can roll this all the way to, let's see. See, I would not want to take a debit, right? I would want to take credit and ultimately never sacrifice any money if I don't have to. So hypothetically, right now, if I wanted to roll this position tomorrow, I'd be able to get it from 50 to 45. Now, in exchange, I'm willing to hold on to this contract for even longer. So in terms of what's a mistake I've made on this channel, I didn't even confirm that this specific option didn't have weekly expirations. So that's a big mistake that I only was able to make while really trading, right? Like I've watched courses, I've watched people on YouTube, but ultimately sometimes you have to just make the mistake for yourself. So in terms of this position, right, because this has been the position that's taken a lot out of us. Like it says we're only down 600, but we're really down like over 4. So that's why it's a credit, right, is because so this is the current premium we would collect like right now, including getting this money back, right? So assuming it expired above $50, then we would just collect all this and that would be it. We'd get all our money back, and then I think $200. But that's why it's a credit, is because basically what you're doing is you're selling an option that is later out and more expensive in premium than what you're currently at. So that's why this $12 is more expensive than this $11.60, where if I go lower, it's a debit because this one is more expensive than the next one. So the next one has to always be more expensive than the previous one. And what you're doing essentially is you're able to buy down your dollar cost averaging basically without having to put more money in. That's really the only way to put it, because you're agreeing to hold on to this option for 50 days instead of 20, but in exchange you're getting a $5 lower price and you're collecting credit, so you're not even losing money. Now if we really wanted to, we can go down here, we can go to 35 and the debit would be 2,200. So in this case, right, obviously it would be a much better strike buying at 35 than 45, but at that point we're taking a $2,200 loss as opposed to going down $5 and still taking a gain, because for me, I don't know what's going to happen, right? So if it does end up going up right away, I'd rather stay in this one because the premium is, I'd rather not lose any money as opposed to potentially buying at 35 while still losing money. So that's again why I would only roll from 50 to 45, but I don't think it's going to be necessary to do it right now. I'd rather wait until expiration gets a little closer, but that's just what I'm doing with that current position. And then this one as well, it's a very similar boat. I actually only opened it last week, I forget which day, but it's not as big of size, right? So I'd rather be keeping my positions to this type of size, one contract for 5,800. This way I have the ability to do 4 or 5 different positions at once on the account, and ultimately I'll never be stuck in this position again. So that's the big mistake, and what I've learned, right, is to look at the expirations, not put the whole account into one trade. And that's what I was doing, and that's why I was able to grow very fast. And I'm not, I don't regret it, right? I don't necessarily think it's a terrible strategy, but now you're seeing what can happen, right? Is you can be stuck rolling for months, and that's money that you could have been using on other plays. And some of the other plays that I've done, right, it's like we look at IonQ, it stayed bullish, right? ACHR as well also stayed bullish. So to me, that just shows that you don't necessarily need to jump from stock to stock. Like sometimes you can do it on one stock and then do it again on that stock, or and that, I guess not but that's also why selling puts has a downside, is because you would have made way more money, right? If I just bought an AC, so when I did ACHR, it was at the $9 range, right? And I did it with, I forget how much I used, but it's up 24% since I sold puts on ACHR. So if I would have just bought and held ACHR, I would have made 24% on that position. Same with IonQ. IonQ was under $40 when I sold puts on it, and ultimately I think it was at like 37, right? So 24%. So I had my whole account in those two positions. If I would have just kept it in those, it would have, continued to make money. Obviously, buying and holding would have been even more profitable. But in this case, we're sticking to selling puts because of the opportunity to roll, right? When you buy, you have no choice but to be locked in that price. And the only way you're going to get lower is if you buy more, where with selling puts, you have the ability to roll. So situations like this arise, it could actually be extremely profitable, right? Because let's just say crypto does go down for 2 to 3 months and I'm able to continue rolling down, and then Connell, even hypothetically, right, it might really sting if it got down here. But let's just say our entries right here, or even, all the way at 30, at that point, it's like you almost want to expire out of the money, right? Because it's like, think about it in this sense. You know, you end up having this trade where you don't even necessarily want to sell covered calls, hypothetically, right? At that point, let's just say it expires here at 25. Now your entry's at 30, and you write it back up for 140%. And that can happen in weeks, right? When we look at this type of move, this was 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So in the end of the day, this might be one of those plays where it takes 2 to 3 months to unfold, but ends up quadrupling our account or getting us from, 20,000 to 45,000 in, 3 months, as opposed to the entire year and a half. So again, I don't have any regrets. I just wish I would have considered why it's better to diversify, right? I ended up just putting the most of the account in any position because I just wanted to collect premium. I didn't want to over diversify. So some of you guys have been reading the Zurich Axioms, which I recommended, and he talks about like why over diversification isn't good. And I was taking that a little too literal, right? So that's all. That's the only lesson I've learned. If you want to see all these small trades that I've taken, right? They were small wins, $500, $600, $700 wins, but I won, for basically a month and a half straight, right? From November 6th all the way to December 18th. And I can tell you that when I was trading, regular ways, very rarely did I win for a month straight. I usually won for maybe a couple weeks, and then I would lose it all. In this case, a month straight of wins to now have a trade where we're forced to figure it out, right? We're scrambling, and we're not afraid. I'm not afraid of what's happening, Obviously, like I said, from my perspective, I don't think crypto looks incredible right now, but hopefully, right? Hopefully the market will make me remember why I quit trading in the first place and why I started selling puts is because, I didn't want to predict it. I wanted to just figure out ways to know I can make money off of stocks, right? That was what it came down to for me, is like buying and holding, or not buying and holding, but just buying in general. It's not easy to buy, right? Like the market is such a roller coaster and it's very difficult to jump in. So something like selling puts, it does have protection towards the downside, and you can do it on stocks you love, collect high premiums and potentially high gains. So that's why I love it. That's why I decided to do it. I'm not going to let this little, hiccup, right? I'm not going to let it bother me. Ultimately, I'm not afraid, right? So that's that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Some Sunday night, wisdom, as you see, right? It's Sunday, 8:15. I'll probably have this video posted in 30 minutes. I try to get these videos out literally right away. Like, it's just, I try to keep it authentic in that regard. But like, when I record the video, I post it. It's not like, oh, this is a month old. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Other than that, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to check out the free community, there's a link in the description. A lot of great people in there, a lot of great conversations. You have the ability to connect with me, and I look forward to seeing you guys in there. And again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.